for me, at least, the niche was communication. It was being able to teach. And in private practice, when you're not associated with academics, and yeah, we eventually started a residency, but it's still not a traditional academic institution. I selected to be in private practice because, quite frankly, academic institutions don't pay anything. Like, they don't pay very much money, right? I mean, they just don't. I'm just being completely honest. And so that's why I did private practice. And the way that I found my way was doing a lot of talks for the pharmaceutical industry. And it wasn't about trying to shill a product. It was more about trying to teach a disease state that needed to be taught to other healthcare practitioners so that patients could have access to certain medications that could help them, that could reduce their mortality, that could, stabilize the loss of their lung function, those kinds of things. And so, my niche was immunology as it pertained to the lung, whether it was asthma, whether it was interstitial lung disease or IPF. And I knew that I wanted to do that seriously in terms of create educational programs when I went to CHEST in Los Angeles in 2016. And I'll tell you like a short story. But I was at CHEST, and you've been to like conferences like that, right? Those like CHEST and ATS and whatever it is. Yeah. I was at CHEST in 2016 in LA, and my interest, and always had been, even in fellowship, was interstitial lung disease, IPF, immunology. I read it every day. I was reading it this morning at 4:00. Like that's just what I love. And I remember going to CHEST, and one night I went out with these executives from Genentech, which is owned by Roche, and they had a product at the time that treated idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. It was called Esbriet or pirfenidone. And we're just out, and I hadn't done anything. I hadn't done any consulting. I was just traditionally working as a pulmonary critical care physician. And I drank, like, I'm not a big drinker, but that night, like, I drank, and it was totally stupid. However, they were asking me the mechanism of pulmonary fibrosis, right? We were talking about it. And as we were talking about it, I just kind of saw these, like, confused faces. And I was like, all right. I was like, fuck it. So I grabbed a napkin, and I asked the bartender for a pen. And I started drawing out the cells that were involved in the mechanism. Like, I drew out the respiratory epithelium, I drew out the alveoli, type 1, type 2 pneumocyte, drew it all out, drew the white blood cells, drew the inflammatory cascade, drew the myofibroblasts, the fibroblast. And I said, here, like, let's look. Like, boom, 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 boom. And then they kind of all looked up, and I just remember the look, and they kind of understood. And I was like, oh, they get it now. And then the next day, I get this email from them. They like invited me to their speakers training.
I was gonna say you were hired after that, right?
Oh, it was done. Yeah, no, it was. Yeah, it was totally.
But that was because that's your passion.